Councilmember Hickey requesting approval to direct staff to research loitering issues related to bridges, overpasses, and underpasses. Mr. Hickey, do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Hickey.
Well, I've had a couple of issues on the 12th Street Northwest overpass. One was a couple months ago where we had a gentleman who was staying underneath the overpass. I had a citizen on the south side of the overpass call me. They'd already called the police department. They were unable to resolve the issue because he didn't want to leave. There's no ordinance in place to handle this type of situation. The gentleman, of course, didn't have restroom facilities. He didn't have water or food. He helped himself to some of the neighbors' spigots to obtain some water, which this family had young children, which concerned them quite a bit, needless to say. I had another lady that was right on the north side of the overpass who's also observed. We've contacted the police department. They have no avenue as far as vagrancy or loitering to move these people on. We've offered them use the shelter, the homeless shelter. If they don't use it, we can't force them to use it. So after talking to staff, the chief, Mr. Trout, I'm directing staff to address these issues and bring them back to council at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Anybody else? Mr. Marshall?
Well, I guess my only issue is not necessarily not supporting this, but my problem is we should cover all areas with a policy, not just one, because if we drive them out of one place, all we do is drive them to another place. So it's kind of pointless, and we have more than one overpass and more than one bridge in this town, but I mean, it needs to be the citywide ordinance for loitering if we're gonna do that. I mean, we have people loitering all around town. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, how many phone calls you mentioned a couple of instances, just 2 phone calls you had related to incidents at the overpass?
I've had 2 separate instances in the last 2 months. One from, as I talked to you about Monica Doyle, and one was Damon Runge on the south side, in which the police were called.
Let's try not to make this a question and answer, Mr. Hickey.
I didn't ask the question.
No, I just wonder too, is it an ongoing issue with our police department? I don't know. I mean, this is the first, no, I've never got any calls on anybody hanging out around incidents on the 12th Street overpass.
It gets brought up periodically, Councilman, and it's not something that typically we can solve the issue and it doesn't become a problem. Occasionally, there will be a person that isn't interested in the suggestions that they need to abide by common sense as far as they're hanging around different areas, and they need to move on to whatever their destination is. And so that's a hard thing, and it's a very difficult thing. It's having discussions actually with the city attorney about this, and it's an item that has been challenged at various times in court as to the loitering laws and personal rights to be able to be on public property. And so it's a serious issue to the individuals that live in a neighborhood that might have this occur, but it also is an issue that can be difficult to solve in an appropriate law ordinance type situation.
Is there homeless people that live underneath that? I mean, are you aware of?
Most of the time, it's transient individuals.
Transient.
Passing through town, they decide to stop off here, and that type of thing. So it's not something. Obviously, we have a shelter. I think if you ask Joey, there's an issue and there's a concern for that area. But we always, our police officers offer whatever assistance they can for those individuals if they need that kind of facility. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Carpers.
I've had some dialogue with some citizens in Mason City too, and that has led me mostly to communication I've had with the police chief. And the first question I had is who has jurisdiction, like over underneath the 12th Street overpass? Is it the city or is it the railroad? And the chief has responded to me that apparently we being the city of Mason City, we do have jurisdiction under the overpass. So consideration of an ordinance may be a viable solution. The trick is to be sure that we craft an ordinance that will withstand court challenges and not infringe on people's constitutional freedoms. Obviously, this is a seasonal problem to the extent that it exists in Mason City. We're not going to have this problem in January and February, at least not like climates to the south of us do. But given that we do have it periodically, and given that we do have some citizens that have expressed a concern, I think it does behoove us to at least have staff look into it. It may be that because of court challenges and constitutional freedoms, we can't change ordinance. But I would rather go through the process and prove that to ourselves rather than assuming. And then when this comes up again next year, we will have addressed it. And it may be that this is gone, there's been enough change since this was last addressed that maybe we can make some meaningful changes to the ordinance and strengthen it. So I know that we haven't addressed this since I've been on the council, so I think it's certainly worthy of some further investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Tronquist. Mr. Weaver, did you?
Well, you know, I guess I've been around too long. Of course, we have homeless people that are all over the community that aren't in the preferred places we want them to stay. I remember there was a campground behind Community Kitchen with several homeless men, and they lived back there, and they didn't want to be in the system, and they went to the Community Kitchen to eat. We've had people in Parker's Woods living under the bridge there. We've had a tent set up right down here. You didn't even know it for 6 months. A guy living in a tent right underneath the bridge. You go to Southbridge Mall. And Parker's Woods is a favorite place. If that guy puts a fishing pole in his hands, you're not going to move him at all. He's got the First Amendment right behind him. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that and it's true, when you roust them out of where they're at, for the most part, they're staying out of your hair. They really are. It's very unusual to have any one of these guys, or women now, go up to somebody's home and get a drink of water. That might have been during that 95-degree temperature, I don't know. I've never heard that being done before, other than back in the 30s when they get off the train and they stay at the Dodge House that Mr. Hardy's restoring, and they beg a sandwich from somebody. And when they were riding the rods, the rails. But yeah, we have people living in their cars in Mason City. And 10 years ago or so, we had an issue where the same thing was brought to us. We wanted to do the loitering thing, and we wanted to stop people from living in their car. The one gentleman made everybody so uncomfortable that he was in his car, and he'd move it every day and park it in another place. And what we found out is that's the slippery slope you're talking about, Jeff, is that where does it stop? There's loitering everywhere, whether it's teenagers or little kids anymore, and how do you cross that line in your First Amendment or the Constitution? So this is a slippery slope. I don't think two people complaining about makes it a great issue. I don't have any problem if you want staff to look into it. It's probably not, I'm not into banning or stopping or getting in those situations, because it's just really, it's too much. They're there, they're out there, and you guys don't want to know about it, but to me, if they're under the bridge, we know where they're at. I know the police many times have had an issue with someone, and they do check under the bridges to see if they're under there, and that's kind of a good thing to know. That's where they're at. It's kind of like bugs in your home, and I'm not comparing them to bugs, but they're there, and if you spray, they scatter, and that's what you're going to do here. And I'm not sure you want them to scatter where you want them out, because Joy Benzon is sitting there. She knows full well that a lot of her clients, or a lot of the people, don't want to stay in the homeless shelters. Some of them turn down free food. They don't even want food. They just want to be left alone. And it is, like Mr. Tornquist says, it's a seasonal issue for the most part. I'm just not interested probably in following through with that, or a curfew for that matter. And either is the police department. They're not interested in a curfew in Mason City either. And for some pretty legitimate reasons, so close to what I'm saying to you. So I can support if you want staff to go look into this, but I probably wouldn't support it in the long run. I think we're doing okay. Every town has those problems. It's the underbelly. We have it in America.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Hickey.
I guess the main reason I brought these up was because this is an area where transient people that are jumping the railroads tend to stay. And these neighborhoods here, the folks that are living in them are concerned about their personal property. The one lady's a single lady, the other one, they have young kids, and they don't know who these people are. They're not local. They're not really living in Mesa City. They're here today, they're gone tomorrow. And they're just trying to take care of their neighborhood, and provide for their family the best they can. So that's why I put it on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. How about Alice? All right, well, we've got a motion and a second.
Could you read the motion,
Yeah.
Was requested approval to direct staff to research loitering issues related to bridges, overpasses, and underpasses.
Any discussion? Double check here. All right, we've got a motion and a second, seeing no discussion. Clerk call roll.
Hickey?
Yes.
Tornquist?
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes.
Marsters?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.